What is red pill? I'm sure most of you have heard about it and its many controversies. I want to bring to you a different perspective, which is to understand why it started in the first place. The first thing we need to do is understand what red pill means. So red pill is used to refer to a process where a person's perspective is dramatically transformed, introducing them to a new and typically disturbing understanding of the true nature of a particular situation, referring to the blue and red pill scene in the movie The Matrix. But in this context, red pilling is when a man is introduced to the realities of the world we're living in and enters the manosphere. But before I get onto the video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoy my content or if you want to see more. And also don't forget to leave feedback in the comments below, of course after watching the full context of the video. Let's continue. The Manosphere is a collection of websites, blogs, and online forums promoting masculinity, misogyny, and opposition to feminism. Now, it isn't purely misogyny-based, which I'll get into later, but it has enough misogyny for it to be mentioned in its definition. But in simpler words, the Manosphere and the Red Pill movement is focused on bringing back masculinity. And it started as a reaction and an attempt to counteract our world being heavily pushed by feminism over the past few centuries. Feminism, regardless of what you think of it today, it was initially created for a powerful purpose, which was fighting for women to be seen as equals. But as the years passed, our world has went from too patriarchal and extremely dismissive of women's rights to acknowledging them so often that it is making young men feel worthless and resentful, leading them down to the manosphere. There are numerous of factors and situations that will lead a man to become red-pilled, so let me list out to you a few of the many examples. Men who have suffered in a series of relationship issues with no improvement, men who have been victims of double standards and societal pressures that are affecting their mental health, men who have found purpose in fighting for men's rights, which I'll get into later, men who have grown pent-up anger towards feminism, etc. Once these men are red-pilled, it leads them down to one of four paths, and I've personally ranked them from most to least toxic, in my opinion. Number 1 are incels, also known as involuntary celibates, who believe they are entitled to being with a woman or sleeping with a woman, but are incapable of doing so because of women. So the whole premise is they blame women for not being able to get with them. And I'd say they constitute about 15% of the manosphere. I'd hope it's not any higher than that. Number 2 is the MGTOW, also known as men going their own way, also known as male versions of hate all men. These are men who have convinced themselves that women are so toxic and so vile that they have chosen to stay far away from them. In other words, they are voluntary celibates, which means that they don't date women, and in the extreme cases, they aren't even friends with women. Number 3 are PUAs, also known as pickup artists. You may think I ranked them way too low on the toxicity scale, but that is just because they are the most vocal. The conclusion I've made in regards to PUAs is that these men made a decision to look at women as a game they need to win. Because they have this feeling of losing control in this world that they are currently living in because of all the femininity, they try to take back control as using every sexual encounter as some sort of win for them as a man in this toxic feminist world they are living in. And also sometimes if they are men who have suffered relationship issues, then they are using their multiple sexual encounters to put their resentment at ease. The toxic parts of this category of the manosphere is the many controversial podcasts and the immature, extremely toxic, and very manipulative techniques they teach each other to pick up women that they disguise under valuing traditionalism in relationships, which may be a video for another time. Fourth and final category are MRAs, which stands for men's rights activists, which are men who advocate for men's rights to improve issues such as self-delete rates, school dropout rates, mental health stigmas, etc. Sometimes certain actors of the men's rights movements will focus more on demeaning feminism rather than focusing on solving men's issues. But that really is the only part that is toxic about MRAs. The least toxic of the four categories. And as toxic as all of these categories may have sounded to you, what drives men to these four communities, specifically the top 3, is pain, is loneliness, is facing societal pressures of what a real man is, and is built up resentment towards radical feminism and male hate groups. It may be hard for many of you to say, but these men are victims. They wanted to find a community. They didn't want to feel alone anymore. They wanted to find their identity as a man, and they found it in the manosphere. Don't blame and attack the consequences. Blame and counteract the cause. Why do certain men need to go to such a place to find meaning or to feel heard? That is the problem that needs to be addressed. Not that the manosphere already exists. It's too late. You can't just stop it. You gotta understand why it happened in the first place. I also think we should take accountability for allowing radical feminists to say crazy nonsense, get away with it much more easily than red-pilled men who say as crazy things. Why don't we call out and criticize both of them to the same extent? Because if we don't, that allows them to use our inconsistencies as proof to justify their toxicity towards women and feminism. And of course, I'm not going to ignore the fact that this whole movement of red pill is not entirely toxic in its own rights. I mean, 2 out of the 4 categories can't be justified whatsoever. Yes, I explained that we don't want to blame entirely on the consequences, but I can acknowledge that the consequence is pretty bad. The manosphere, even though they are victims who came to that place, that doesn't undermine its toxicity. Honestly, women and men need to seriously need to stop using their own personal relational issues with each other to justify their hyperbolic generalizations. All negative traits, whether bad or downright evil, aren't gendered. Feminists need to 100% dial it back and stop this wave of heavily blaming men. And same goes for red-pilled guys completely blaming women for everything. Why can't we understand each other's differences and struggles? Is that so hard to do? Let us stop undermining each other's problems. We shouldn't be focused on who is more oppressed, but why do we each have these specific issues and how can we do our best to solve them? The most important trait that people lack these days is understanding and empathizing. And to understand, you have to be willing to sometimes listen more than you speak. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the video and your thoughts on what I said, things you agree on, things you think I've missed. What I meant about doing a video on PUAs in the future is maybe I'll discuss how PUAs try to push a life of shallowness and materialism on the young impressionable men. And if you guys want to see a video about that, let me know. But I couldn't touch on that right in this video. I didn't have time. Anyways, hit the like button, subscribe, and African mama slap the notification bell. And I'll see y'all on the next video when we're back on my channel.